But
That's a good
we
topic. That's a
followed a
good
format.
topic right there. Is being able to boil some water or cook some food, and you
Yeah,
don't always if a rocket stove in your backyard is the only thing you're doing, there's probably some other stuff you could do. But that's in the plan. Like we've got a
two
solar
is one
generator.
is none.
Exactly. We've got a solar generator, and I've got a single burner. I can boil water if the power goes out,
Hmm.
and but if something happens and it's not sunshining for a week,
Yeah,
then
what you
I
gonna
can
do?
go in my backyard and use a camping stove, propane stove, or you get some concrete cinder blocks, guys, and you can build a rocket stove.
Little $10
There's gonna
rocket
be
stove, which
there's gonna be a tree somewhere that you can get to and rip some twigs off of, and it's
right.
not like you have to live in the wilderness to be able to do some of these more primitive kind of
Hmm.
campy survival
But
things.
even just having like propane, I mean, we've got a bunch of the little green 1 pound propane tanks. We've got some of the little camping sterno things with the boiling, the base to boil water on that hooks up to that. I mean, like having like we buy that stuff on sale when we see it. I look at the propane and the price of those propane tanks has gone way up since I bought those, and I'm glad I bought them. I mean, it's not going to go bad. It's a sealed container.
Yep.
Um, the like the camping stoves, I found those things on clearance. Just we stroll like through Academy or Target,
Yep.
um, Amazon Prime Day. Like when you see stuff like this come on sale, it's like, well, hey, that's 50% off. Let me
Yep.
grab that. And so it's kind of that two is one. We've got two or three different ways to cook. We got more than that. We got a half dozen ways to cook food and boil water.
You can refill your own 1 pound green ones with a little bitty adapter
Hmm. Right.
and save
Take it
yourself
with you.
so much money.
Yeah, take it with you if you have to. Like again, back to the if you have to bug out and leave. Well, do you have enough room to take a 20-pound propane tank? Maybe, maybe not. Can you take a
Right.
couple of 1 pounds? Yeah, maybe. You can stuff those under the seat. Thinking about things like that, like just that, I find it to be fun. Like to think, okay, like I run scenarios in my head, and
Yes.
some people may say I'm crazy, but I run scenarios in my head of what if this happens? What would I do? Like that's it's like a game to me almost. I don't live in fear. Like people are like, oh, you're living in fear. No, I'm not. It's like a game. It's like a puzzle in my head. Like, how would I handle this situation? And by knowing how I would handle the situation, I'm not scared about it. I'm not fearful.
When you think
It's
through the
just, hey, this is what I would
scenarios,
do.
when you really think through the scenarios,
Hmm.
then you'll start to think of things you haven't considered yet, and you'll run into a situation
Yes.
eventually that you're not ready for, and that's when you have found a weakness, you have found a hole, and you fix it while you're thinking about it. But
Hmm.
I do the same thing, and I don't want to say I'm a pessimist, but I'm kind of a worst case scenario thinker,
Yeah.
and I think that's just part of me having a creative head, a left side brain. But if you can imagine kind of a worst case scenario,
Hmm.
you don't immediately start preparing for that. You kind of move towards it slowly as you can afford, you know, as you have room for, and as you and but I love scenarios, dude.
It's
That's
it's fun. I mean, like it's um, when we travel, we. I mean, I take hard copies of maps for whatever state we're traveling in, through, and around. Um, you know, thinking of just little things like that. Like, well, what if the grid went down? How would I like navigate to get back home if I'm not on familiar roads, or if I need to take back roads, stuff like that? How do you? What if an EMP hit and it knocked out all electronics, all cars, everything? Because there's, I mean, and you can argue with people about whether it would or would not take out a car. It doesn't matter. But what if it did take out a car? How are you going to get home? I had somebody ask me on one day, well, how would you get home? Like, how are you going to travel if the grid goes down? I said, commandeer the nearest bicycle.
yep.
I mean, like that's like think through like, well, what if I've been driving and I know that like solar flares are real, and they hit us all the time from the sun.
Hmm.
CMEs, coronal mass ejections from they hit us all the time. But with a weakening magnetic field, uh, the likelihood of it having an impact on our grid is higher than it usually is. And so I'll be driving somewhere and I think, okay, if something happened right now, what would I do? And that's what, like, those are the scenarios that are like, what would I do? Right. Like, I'm driving, I'm staring at a windshield. I just think, like, what would I do? I would do this, 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 and this. And I feel better about it. I'm like, okay, that's good.
So I've been thinking about doing it for a while because when I do work, I work a county over, and most of the time on a regular day, my bicycle's just sitting in my garage, just
Mm-hmm.
sitting there waiting on a camping trip. That's all it's doing. And I've got a 6 foot bed, covered bed in my truck, and
Mm-hmm.
I aired the tires up the other day. I aired up every bike tire we've got, just in case the electricity goes out and I don't have an inflator anymore that works. Um,
The
Although
old
I could use the solar generator for that, or that, yes, sir,
the old
absolutely.
bike pumps. I've got one of those for that reason.
The bike is fixing to go in the back of the truck, just because, like you said, running scenarios. What if an EMP happens and the truck doesn't work, or
Mm-hmm.
what if the truck works but their traffic is just dead standstill,
Yeah, gridlock.
and
Yeah.
I need to be able to either get to safety or try to get home. And
Mm-hmm.
you can get into whether having being on a bike is going to make you a target and all that stuff. But this thing is otherwise sitting in my garage.
Right.
I'm gonna put it to work for me in the back of my truck.
That's right. It certainly make it serve a purpose.
What are your uh, what do you think your biggest weaknesses? What are you working on right now that you're trying to learn or do or catch up on?
Uh, so the biggest thing for me right now, I think that we're kind of working towards is we have a decent sized garden. It's not massive at all, but I've got a few trees I'm going to take down, and I mean, we've got just a backyard with grass. I mean, I say grass, it's weeds, but um, take down some trees because it's too shaded to grow anything. And I want to, I mean, paddock off and fence off the backyard to a point where I can grow 3 times as much food next year if I want to. I don't have to, but I can. That's a big thing. Is food. I think is one of those that always sits in the back of my mind. Of okay, I mean, yeah, I've got some food up there. I got some 25-year shelf life food over here. I've got my Thrive Life food. I've got all these little things, but back to what I was saying originally, like you've got to be able to replenish that stuff if you ever have to use it. And so having a garden space big enough, I think is a challenge and one of the things that I'm working on. Solar power is one of those that I really want to work on, but it's expensive. Um, I know there are some cheaper options out there, like the little solar generators, but like I want like full whole home solar. But I mean, you could argue if an EMP hit or a solar flare, then that's no good anymore.
Oh, we can always argue.
But I mean, like, so what's the like if that is what you're prepping for, why get solar?
Yep.
But if we're looking at maybe grid down because of overconsumption, because of infrastructure issues, then solar is something that you want to prep for. So like that's one of those things that are
Rising energy cost.
yes, yes. Which thankfully, like I don't feel like we've been hit yet.
Yeah.
Yet is the key word.
Yeah.
Like our gas bill, our power bill. Of course, we're on like balance billing, so I'm sure I don't even know if it's gone up yet. Because it hasn't affected my bank account yet.
Yep.
But like none of that's changed in the last few years, which is okay, I guess. But it's gonna go up. It'll go up like everything else.
And I know you pay attention to. You don't just pay attention to the U.S. You take bits and
The
pieces
world,
of news
yeah.
we hear and stuff we see on TikTok, and there's a lot of stuff going on in other countries that we
I've
don't
got some sources
necessarily.
too that yeah.
Yeah, and you got people in other countries right now, in up in arms about electric bills and
Mm-hmm.
power bills,
Oh yeah.
and it's I keep telling people it's this winter is going to be different.
Yeah, and that's so yeah. To piggyback on that and then answer your previous question is I I believe we're going to be in for a very cold winter in our area. Um, like so we've got a 2 level house, a basement. We've got a basement, main level and then a basement, and I want to put a wood stove in our basement so that I can if worst case I can heat rises, I can throw some wood, throw a fire in the wood stove downstairs and heat will rise. It'll kind of heat upstairs, make it tolerable. We can live in the basement if we had to. Like that's kind of one of those worst case scenario type things. But I want to put that in, and then I gotta do I have enough firewood to heat the house? So like those are things that I'm like that's kind of pressing. I really need to work on that. Will I? I don't know.
So I find myself going to Facebook. Now, listen, we live in a 2-story house, but we don't have a basement. And I find myself on Facebook Marketplace looking at wood
Uh-huh.
stoves a whole lot.
Yep.
And I've still got a little learning to do, but I'm trying to because I got the creative entertaining gene. I didn't get the handyman DIY gene. I mean, I hold screws for my wife when she puts Christmas presents together for the children. Um, but
Nothing wrong with that. No shame.
trying to figure out how I would make a wood stove work
Uh-huh.
in my house.
You have a
So
fireplace?
no, we don't have a fireplace. So I would have to do something with
Because you got to go through 2 levels.
exhaust. Um,
Now you can go like out the wall, like behind a wood stove, out the wall, and then up,
gotcha.
which is what I would have. Which is what I would have to do down here.
But
We've
I'm
got a
kind of,
spot over here that would go out and then just up beside our other. We've got a chimney upstairs,
and then you
fireplace.
talked about making the garden bigger. So we did that this year,
Yeah,
and we just recently cleaned up the backyard a little bit. Got rid of an older car that was just kind of sitting back there, and an RV. And an investment we made this year was we finally bought our own tiller. Um,
nice.
Now, being able to till a garden in a bug out situation where you have to grow your own food in the wilderness is one of my worst case scenarios that I try to plan for. But
But
we're
here's the
gonna
crazy thing. Go ahead.
we're gonna make the garden probably twice the size next year in the
Yeah,
spring. And now that I have my own tiller and don't necessarily have to rely on my next door
rent
neighbor to come
or
till it for me,
yeah.
we have a little more control.
So for those people that don't have a tiller, that want to grow their own food, that want to plant a garden, don't have a tiller, don't have the money to buy one. I mean, there's the whole no-till garden method too. Like you can, and there's an argument to be made that it's better or that you need to till. Like you can argue that all day long with someone, but there are other options. And I think that's important, even like in prepping, just to think about. Like if you think that this is the only way to do it, you're wrong. There's plenty of other ways to do it. You can do a no-till garden bed and make your own compost and add to your soil and grow your soil, uh, the health of your soil, and not have to till it every year. So I mean, there's always other ways to do something.
Blackbeard Firestarter packs small so you can take it on your plunders. The best kindling for any situation, wet or dry. One rope can light more than 50 fires. Click the link, if you dare, and get the best fire starter around.
That's the thing.
Get creative.
As creators and educators on TikTok, it's hard because most of the time when we're doing videos, it's more of a general overall kind of thing. But everybody's preparedness situation is so different, so
Yes.
different. And you saying that there's so many ways to do it. Like this year, here's my worst case in my head is let's say that worst case scenario I have to bug out and go live in the wilderness. Now I'm not a bushcrafter. I'm a survival enthusiast and I'm a prepper with some wilderness training.
Right.
But thinking as far as I can through that and wanting to be able to grow food, I'm like, no, I've got survival seeds in my house. We have seed bank at my house, and I also have survival seeds I keep in my truck, mylar, survival garden kind of stuff. How do I get the ground prepared to get these things in there? And I've thought about buying manual tools to put in the back of my truck to have, at a minimum, I've got a shovel. I mean, imagine trying to, and I also did research on the no-till method this year. And my hiccup with that, and you can correct me if I've misunderstood it, is
Look,
is
I don't know everything, so
the preparation takes a minute. It's like you can't. You can put like cardboard down or something down, and then you put compost on top of that. But you really have to. It takes a while.
It takes a minute to build that that soil composition. What you could do is till it your first year, because if you till it, you've now loosened up the soil. The argument against the no-till method is that you destroy the soil composition, that all these microorganisms in the soil, you've now uprooted all of that and destroyed that. But if you were to destroy that your first year and then add to it and just keep adding to it every year, then you could. So it's a long game. It's a long game kind of thing. But
the other thing I learned about a reason to do no till is like when you till the soil like that, there's a whole lot of dormant seeds under the soil that just can't come up, and what you're doing when you till is bringing all those to the surface, and next thing you know, you've got weeds in your garden.
That's right. Broad fork it's like one of those massive forks that you throw down and you kind of lean back on it and it loosens up, and it doesn't destroy the soil composition. It just aerates it, opens it up. I've seen some people that have put their arm this deep into the soil after.
I'm pretty sure I'm gonna end up with one of those.
I've got a friend of mine who says he'll build me one. We'll see.
Nice.
Yeah, he's a welder, and he's like, I can make one of those for you. And I'm like, all right. But but I'm not gonna sit here and bash the tilling method. We tilled our garden this year, so like I'm not gonna bash that.
Same here.
There's always other ways.
I'm gonna till it next year.
And there's nothing wrong with that. People have tilled gardens for centuries. But there's always another way to do things, and that fits throughout prepping. There's always other ways to do it.
I think a lot of people get it. It seems like even before we're preppers and before we realize we need to be prepping, that most of us are pretty deep critical thinkers that like to plan ahead. Mm-hmm. And then we discover prepping, and if you do it right, it becomes fun. Like you said, thinking through scenarios, it's not fearful, it's fun. But
some people find it fearful. I have some people that I have talked to, and they've even said, like, some of your videos terrify me. And I'm like, well, don't watch them.
It's not what I'm trying to do.
It's not, and I'm sorry. That's what I incited is fear, because that's never been my purpose. My desire. It's always been, here's a problem, and fix it. But I don't always do a good job of communicating that, and so there's some videos that I've pulled down because they were somewhat fear mongering, and I don't want to do that. I want people to say, hey, here's a problem, and then here's a solution. Here's something to think about, and here's how I get around it and fix it and be prepared for it, so that.
And then somehow that message gets completely twisted in social media, and
it does. And I'm not gonna deny that it's not my fault.
Yeah,
or deny that it's my fault, because there's, I don't know how I communicate sometimes.
Yeah.
I know what I think, but I don't know how somebody else is going to interpret what I think. And that's a challenge. That's a lot of the hate comments that you get back on TikTok.
I think I blocked so many in the beginning that I think I got most of them taken care of.
Man, they come out of the woodwork.
But block is definitely your friend. Now you obviously, so you're a prepper and you're a homesteader. Mm-hmm. But there's I don't want to keep you here for 3 hours because we're on a timeline. But there are other sides to you as far as, and we'll delicately explore it. Political leanings and conspiracy and
Uh-huh.
kind of worldview and gut feeling that we're all having right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll let you explain that a little bit if you want
Oh
to.
boy. All right.
You can give them a preface to maybe a future podcast.
So yeah. So I was having a conversation with a friend about this just the other day, even. And I grew up very, very much conservative. And I've held a lot of those beliefs, but I'm not naive enough to think that the conservative, the Republican side of things is any better or worse than the Democratic side of things, or vice versa. I think everyone in politics is bought and paid for, and I don't trust any of them. I trust some more than others, but I don't really trust any of them because it's always, well, I'll do this for you if you do this for me, kind of. But I I find myself, the older I get, realizing that both sides are just complete trash. But so the solution you would think would be libertarian, right? Right in the middle, very little government, little regulation. But that's not the answer either. I don't have the answer. I'm just saying that none of it's the answer, and it's always going to be there. There's nothing we can do to get rid of it. There's always going to be people in power, and what I always come back to is I don't need to trust anyone who's in politics, right, left, in the middle, to take care of me and my family. I need to take care of me and my own family. And that's where the prepping and the homesteading comes from is I can't rely on a system to take care of me and my family. Uh, I have, like I said, I grew up very conservative, but I've moved more to the middle. But then there's some things that I go, nope, I'm way back over here. But then there's some things that I look at the left and I go, y'all got this right.
Yep.
So I don't, and I think people that side with party lines should reconsider. I'm not saying you're wrong, but just should reconsider your viewpoints. Someone
And
that sides
I think
completely with Republican, completely with Democrat, and says, no, if the Republicans say this, then I believe it. If the Democrats say it, I don't believe it, or vice versa. I think you need to develop your own beliefs and your own opinions.
that's where I've landed too. And I've tried over the, a lot of us didn't get in, at least people in my age group, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm 42, guys. Um, didn't really care about anything until several years ago. And now that we care about it, we realize it's probably been going on for 50 plus years.
Mm-hmm.
And I,
This I'm gonna make some people mad here, I think.
oh God, let's do it.
So you got a lot of people right now that are like, oh, let's go Brandon. Let's go Brandon. He sucks. He's awful. He's a terrible president. He's just old. He's been in politics for a long time. I looked at his track record. I don't like him necessarily. Um, but then you've got the Trump people and their Trump train. I've got friends and family that are like full blown. Trump is my president. Trump is the savior of the world. 2020, he shut the dang economy down for 2 weeks. The stuff that we're seeing today, he started it.
Trump wanted to shut down TikTok.
Yeah,
People have such a short memory.
I know. So I don't love him either. Like I don't
Yeah.
like any of them.
Yep.
I think that they have to be there.
It's a show.
It is every bit of it. And if you really start, and I'm not going to get into this, but if you really start following the train, it leads back to a handful of people that run the entire system.
Yep.
And it's a swing of the pendulum every 8 years, 4 years, 4 to 8 years. It's all there's puppet masters.
Gotcha.
And we're all being played. That's my opinion of it. So
I think
the
I think the waters are kept muddy on
Oh yeah,
purpose.
yes,
Um,
disinformation. Yeah.
I think that controlled opposition is a thing. I think they're, we see most of the hate and division planted, and
Hmm.
I think a lot of it would go away organically if they would stop planting it. But the more division they can create, the better off they're going to be. And
Well, and that's
you said it all boils down to, and here's what I tell people: I know you're worried. You're worried about these big things we're hearing about, and you're worried about what's going to happen over the next 6 months to 3 years, because I think that's where
hmm
everybody's head's at on a timeline. You have to focus on what you can control, and
yep.
you can't control when we go to WW. You
Hmm.
can't control the next pandemic. You can't
Right.
control what happens in November, but you can control what happens to your family,
That's right.
and that's why we prep, because we don't know what's going to happen. Go ahead, man. I'm sorry.
No, you're exactly right. Though. I mean,
Hey, let's piss some more
exactly
people
right.
off. Come on, man.
Oh, I mean, chemtrails are real. I'm just kidding. No,
See, dude. There's so much research to do. I can't. You know,
that was just a jab, just because I don't know.
I don't either.
But I look at something and I go, okay, that is a contrail. I know that
Yep.
that's a contrail, but that's been up there for 6 hours. There's no way that's a contrail.
Yep. My
What's
wife the
in
other
it?
day. My
What's in
wife the
it?
other
I
day is
have no
like,
idea.
I said, "Was it supposed to rain today?" And she's like, "No." She's like, I saw those in the sky yesterday and thought to myself, it's going to rain." And sure enough, it rained the next day when it was only like a 5% chance. So but like you said,
You don't
I
know
don't.
what's in
It's
it.
so hard. There's too much research to do, and I'm sure you feel the same way. It's like you can't trust anything you see.
Nope. And,
It's
but like
all
you said, that's on purpose.
Yep.
Because
So I can
because if I can confuse you a little bit, then when I sprinkle the truth in there, you question if it. When I sprinkle something that's fake in there, you question it. Like now you just don't know anymore.
just confused
All by design,
perpetually.
which is the downfall of social media, in my opinion,
Yeah, I agree.
which has been made worse by social media. I think.
Over the next, so what's in your head? Because I think the first podcast is about over. We got 12 more to do after this, but what is in your head? Um, and I know you'll preface it with you don't know what's going to happen, and you can't make predictions, and you're not the prepper news, because I do the same thing too. But you what are you most concerned about, like over the next, let's say, 3 months to a year,
Inflation.
as far as what and how that affects people's preparedness, and maybe a few things that they can do to get ready for it?
I think inflation is, I mean, huge. We're starting to see that already, and we have seen that. I think we're, um, and this will probably make some people, this goes along with the fear mongering, but this is just what I believe is coming. I hope that I'm wrong, but I think that we will see a recession or a depression that rivals that of the 30s. I truly believe that, and I think it'll all be by design. So, am I fearful of it? I don't live in fear. I'm just aware of it, and I'm doing what I can to hopefully prepare for it and hope that it never comes. But I mean, you look at the inflation numbers, you look at supply chain issues, things that people can and can't find anymore. I mean, I think it all culminates, and it's gonna. I think it'll. This is pure speculation, a pure guess on my part. I think it'll all happen after the elections. I think that they'll. I think that they'll limp this along until the elections, and then I think it'll break loose. That's just my opinion. It's a gut feeling. It's something that I think will happen. But then you look at what's going on over in Ukraine with Russia. I think that all culminates here in the next year also. But I think, we've got Ukraine and we got Russia, the brink of World War III potentially. I think that we get drug into that. Um, I hope not, but he's not backing down. And so unless he's gone, it's going to continue to get worse and worse. And so I think we get drug into that. And even that you could argue is by design. So, now if we end up in that kind of scenario, I mean, you're talking nuclear war at that point. And I don't think anybody's prepared to that. And I don't really want to live in that world.
I think, but you don't fear it. You think about it and you try to plan, but your planning still ends up being food, water, shelter, security, and those types of things.
I think you're down to the same thing.
I think I couldn't agree more. I haven't heard you say anything I disagree with today.
And if you did, you can say so though. Like that's the beauty of it is we can
disagree.
Yes, because people think that I have to make you believe what I believe, and that's the beauty of humanity is that we can have different opinions, we can talk about them, and we can learn from each other. And hey, guess what? Maybe you learn something from me, and I learn something from you, and we are better. You can
have an opinion I think is wrong and still be a good person.
Yes. You can have an opinion that I completely agree with and still be a terrible person.
Right?
So it's
I agree with you totally. I think it's going to be a huge economic, and I think when you said that it has the potential to be 1930ish, which would a whole lot of people falling below the poverty line, our way of life changing.
I heard someone a while back. This has been like a decade ago. And we're starting to kind of really see it. It's the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer, and the middle class is getting smaller.
Yep, you got people going from middle class to dropping below the poverty line.
Yep,
and bless the people that are already below the poverty line's heart because it's only going to get worse for them.
That's right.
And I've been amazed.
But then you've got government. The government is here to help and going to give the people below the poverty line free stuff and free food and EBTs and all this stuff. And all they've done is now create dependence on the system, which is the complete opposite of what I believe. I believe that those programs are there for a purpose. They're important to help people when they need them. But I think that we as people need to find a way to get off of the dependence of any system. That's just my opinion. But
I've been amazed because there are lots of economic signs around us. You can look at the S&P and the stock market and start comparing that to other points in our nation's history. Listen, we've been in depressions before. We've been in recessions before. We've had housing market crashes before. But there's a whole lot of extra stuff going on this time that
there is.
I have been amazed that it has. I feel like when the economic crisis happens, it's going to be like this.
Yep.
And everybody's going to go, it's not going to be a gradual, wow, look what's happening. It's going to be, oh my gosh, when did this happen? Why weren't we paying attention?
Mm-hmm. But I could see it going the other way too, though. I don't disagree with you, but I could absolutely see hey, let's make this a very long, drawn out. And then guess what? If it's long and drawn out, they won't notice it. I don't know. I'm not saying that that's the answer.
Dude, I know.
It could go both ways. But I'm with you, though. I think it will be like what just happened?
And here's I tell people to walk. You got to walk that center line of preparedness. Like, you got to prepare, but you can't be a crazy prepper. Okay? You got to stay in the middle. And
keep a rational head on your shoulders.
You have to, when you're planning and prepping, you have to think of the bad scenarios. So what's the worst thing that could happen? And then what's not so bad?
What's more likely?
There are things you can do during a financial crisis, a recession. There's decisions you can make with your money and with your life during those points in history that if things got better, you wouldn't end up on the winning side. You'd end up with more money or a better job because you went back to school. And even talking to my own financial advisor, he's talking to me from a financial guy, obviously with a little bit of an interest, even though I trust him, but he's not a prepper. So I've got to be able to tell him, hey man, I don't know that we're going to come out of this, or I think this is going to be really bad. Now tell me what to do with my money instead of telling me just to put more in the stock market.
Yeah, that's I mean, you look at the stock market, it hadn't crashed, but it's going down.
It's going down.
Now that's not a full indicator of the economy, but
True.
still,
Well, you got
gold and silver have gone up a little bit.
you have got what retailers are doing ahead of the the winter season, as far as they've got too much stock, they've got too much inventory, which is one of two things: they order too much, or people are buying less. A lot of places have canceled huge music concerts over the winter. So when you said that I think it's going to be a bad winter too, man.
Start looking at those signs. Now the thing is you don't live in fear of that, but you keep that kind of up here as, okay, this can happen. I'm gonna be kind of prepared for it. I'm not gonna live in fear, but I'm just gonna be on the lookout for it. And if it happens, then I've kind of got my stuff in order. Like,
Yes.
if you're fearful of a depression happening and you don't have a canner and canning jars, buy it now, but while you can still afford it. And you don't have to go buy the $500 All-American canner. You can get the $60 Presto canner from Walmart.
And works just fine.
It does.
Yeah.
I like my All-American. I trust it, but I had a Presto.
Yeah. We still got a Presto.
Fine. You do?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It works fine, right?
Absolutely.
Has it never not canned anything for you?
I ain't had a single problem with it.
Has it ever blown up on you?
Nope.
No.
I've asked it to, like with my head over top of it, man.